Hi everybody, Chris Pye is here again for another classroom of PCA sim racing. This week we are going to be tackling the road course at Indianapolis. It is a scorcher. One of the, shticks for this week is not only are we driving a classic track at the Yard of Bricks, but we're also going to crank up the heat. It's the end of summer, fall is here, but we're going to have one more hot one before we totally get into fall weather. So track temps are going to be as high as the sim pretty much allows, so make sure that you're practicing on really, really hot track surfaces. I think my times and the track that I've done here where I put some laps in for this is 134 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's a scorcher. What is that going to mean for us while we drive? That means we're going to have less grip. Overall, the higher the temperature, the less mechanical grip we have in the car. The tires are going to feel greasy. You're going to probably get a couple of okay laps. Maybe your second and third lap will be a decent amount of grip, but then the grip is going to kind of fall off and the car is going to just feel like it's got overheated tires, which is exactly the case. We can't lower the pressures any lower than what we are normally running. So the result is overall higher tire pressures throughout the run. Higher tire pressure means less grip, and that gives you that greasy feeling. The tire is effectively ballooning and your contact patch is shrinking. So what does that mean? Well, we just have to make sure that we're driving within our means around this track. Indy has a couple of main characteristics, I'd say. The first being we've got these really slow corners off of really fast straightaways. So we got the little map here. Turn one, then the back straight going into a left-hander, that turn, and then also coming off the oval out of turn one on Indy Oval, coming down into the little infield section. All of these turns drive very similarly, but each turn has its quirks. The other characteristic of Indy is very high-speed sweepers. Specifically the big, long right-hander that's leading on to the main straightaway on the front stretch. It's super hot, super fast, very, very, edgy, especially in these hot temperatures. And we need to do our best to make sure that we have good confidence going through turn 12. I think it's turn 12. So we don't have an incident there that could potentially end our race. For the races that we have this season, the setup is open, so you're free to make adjustments as you wish. One thing I would say, when you are setting up your car for Indy specifically, is focus on setting up for turn 12. Make turn 12 comfortable. Get it to where you're not really necessarily have to think about it, and make sure it's that way 10 laps into a run. If it feels great on lap 2 and lap 3, that's fantastic. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's also going to feel like that on lap 15, 10 or 15. Again, tires get hot, they start to wear, especially that left rear is going to be taking a beating around this track. And as that left rear heats up and wears, you're going to get less and less grip, which means the tendency to lose grip at that left rear first. So again, build your setup to make turn 12 comfortable. Once you get turn 12 comfortable, then you can focus on maybe tweaking the setup for elsewhere around the track. And then once you feel like you've got a good setup where you've got good speed, come back to turn 12 and make sure that the little adjustments you've made elsewhere for the track are still holding up for turn 12. Any questions about setup, track, car before we go into the turn-by-turn track walk for Indy?
Are you going to cover maybe specifics on how to do the turn 12 setup? Is that a roll bar adjustment or ride height or
well, that's
camber? What?
No, good questions. Let's talk about it real quick. So in general, for the setup, what the tendency for turn 12 is it's off camber slightly. And there's a little bit of a bump right pretty much at apex, and we'll go over it in the track walk with more specificity. But to set up the car for a high-speed right-hander where you're constantly accelerating through, you need stability in the car. And we've got a couple of mechanisms in this Cup car that we can do to try to increase our stability. The first is the roll bars. So you can adjust the front roll bar and you can adjust the rear roll bar. The higher the number, I believe, on the roll bar, the stiffer that roll bar is for that for the front or the rear of the car. The stiffer any particular part of the car, the less grip, I'm putting air quotes, the less grip it tends to have, meaning that it's going to lose traction quicker. It's going to have less mechanical grip relative to the other portion of the car. So when we talk roll bars, you got the front end, you got the rear end. If the front end is relatively stiffer than the rear, the car tends to understeer. And the reason it's understeering is because the front tires are going to lose grip before the rear tires. So car on a balance, if it's on a balance going through a corner, the front end is going to start to slide before the rear, which means you're going to push and have an understeer situation. That's a very safe setup, but it's not very fast. Inversely, if you stiffen up the rear of the car and soften the front, you add grip to the front axle, you take it away from the rear axle, and the rear is going to lose traction first, all things equal. The rear end loses traction first, the tendency to oversteer. If you're oversteering through turn 12, you're going to be catching the car and countersteering through a very high-speed section. If you have too much oversteer, it's going to loop on you if you're not careful. So higher risk, but a rotating car tends to be a little bit faster than an understeery car. The other mechanism we have is this big darn wing on the back of this cup car. The more aero we add, or the more attack angle we add to the wing, the more aerodynamics are going to go over that rear wing and push the rear of the car into the ground, adding grip to the rear tires or the rear axle. More grip in the rear means relatively less grip in the front, which means understeer. So in general, more wing means understeer if everything else is equal. Less wing means less aero going over it, less grip on the rear axle, which means oversteer, all things considered. So the balance the balance you've got to kind of keep with the rear wing is, if you add maximum rear wing for turn 12 and you get it nice and stable, means you are going to be slower down the straightaways. And there's two massive straightaways on this track. And so it's a balance of how much speed, top end speed, do I want to give up because of aero drag versus how much rear end grip do I want to have through turn 12. That's something only you can answer relative to your driving style. We can also affect the rake of the car, which is how high the rear of the car is relative to the front. If we have no rake or the car is sitting flat, the platform is going to tend to be a little bit more understeery. If we add rake to the car, so we raise the rear of the car up, it's going to tend to have more oversteer. It's going to tend to rotate more. More aerodynamics or a higher attack in the wing, so more wing in the rear, you want to offset with more rake, because the faster the car goes, the more aero going over that rear wing, it's going to push the rear of the car down. So we offset that push and increase in rear grip with more rake to achieve kind of what's called aero balance, to kind of get that neutralness of the platform. So more wing, you want to add more weight, rake. Less wing, you want to kind of take rake out. Ultimately, all these things kind of work in conjunction to create a platform and create a car that, again, is comfortable through turn 12, because we're driving this thing for an hour at this track. You may get a setup that is lightning fast, and you can knock off that great lap once, twice, heck, maybe even 10 times in a row. But let's say out of 10 laps, you really run the risk of having a spin in that 10 laps because of the setup in the car. I would say that's probably too aggressive of a setup. Even if you're fast on 9 out of 10 laps, all it takes is one spin, and you just gave away all of that advantage you had on the fast laps and then some. So you don't want to have a spin. So create a car that's comfortable to drive for an hour, that you can still focus on actually racing, because remember, we're not hot lapping, we're going wheel to wheel. So you're going to be thinking about a whole lot of other things than just trying to control the car. So whatever setup allows you to have the mental capacity to continue to actually race with other people, that's the setup that is going to be the best race setup. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about setup? I know I went pretty quick through that. In general, there's not a whole lot we can do with this car relative to other cars like GT3 class cars, or heck, even GT4 cars. You can do a lot more to the setup like switch spring rates, change dampers, all sorts of stuff. The Cup car is designed to be a very spec car. So other than ARBs, wing, rake, very minor adjustments, there's not a whole lot we can do. And in fact, the first two races that I've done in the pro class, and I got sixth both races, I'm just running the iRacing setup with maybe one or two tweaks, changing the wing a little bit depending on the track. And that's what I've been running. So the iRacing setup for the specific tracks are always a really good starting point. And frankly, if you want to just run that and not worry about setups, that's perfectly valid too. That's what I've been doing, and seeing some success with it. So, all right. Any questions about that? Setup, car, track, heat? Okay, cool. All right, well, let's...
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so let's hop into the track walk if we got no other questions. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go into cockpit, and I'm going to show a lap that I was able to do. So my fast lap I was able to do was about a mid 28 at 134 degrees track temp. That is really hot, but it is what it is, and it's what we got to practice with. So here we are. All right, so that's the lap that we're going to take a look at. You could see me going through that last corner, really dancing the car, holding on to it as best I could. She gets squirrely, to say the least. So let's take it turn by turn.
Chris, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I see there are two high up 3D curbs. Any special adjustments to the suspension to handle those, or you stick to the default setup?
Yeah, so and again, I believe you can't make any damper adjustments on this particular car. And you can't make any spring adjustments either. So our dampers and our springs are what they are. This car handles them pretty well. That being said, though, other than one corner in particular, which is the little chicane going onto the back straight, I wouldn't touch the curbs. I wouldn't even nibble them if you can avoid it. The more you go on to the curbs, and we'll talk about it here in a second going into turn one, it's the first opportunity to see these giant curbs. But anytime you hit the curbs here, other than the chicane, on these little tight corners, it really kicks the car up, and you're basically putting the car on two wheels, and it delays your ability to go to throttle significantly. You have to wait for the car to come down, land, rebound, and then settle, and then you can go to throttle. If you avoid the curb entirely, you can go on throttle much sooner. So whatever advantage you may gain by cutting the corner, is kind of lost in that you have to delay your throttle significantly, and you run the risk of over bouncing it, getting on throttle too soon, and looping the car. So, but we'll talk about that. But yeah, no, unfortunately, you can't really do a whole lot with the actual suspension on this car to kind of negate it like you can a GT3 car. So, but great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. All right, so let's take a look. As always on these, down here at the left is the telemetry, so you can see my speed, my gear, and you can see very small, but it's my steering wheel and then my pedals. Green for the accelerator, red for the brake. Coming up into turn 1, we have some really excellent braking boards, and we're going to be driving right under them. So our vision, I mean, these brake boards are just perfect in our vision. The only thing you need to be cautious of coming into this brake zone is because there's so many of them, if you're racing somebody side by side, it's very easy to lose track of which board is actually which. I've done it on more than one occasion where I've blown past my brake board because I see another one coming up right behind it, and I think that one's the brake board because I'm racing somebody. Be very careful and be very keen on what number you want to pick, and make sure you brake there. Don't miss it by 100 feet because that's not good. You're going to drift into the car behind you or in front of you. For me, I've found that the 600 board works really well for me in this hot temperatures. Could you maybe go to 500? Maybe, but you really run the risk of locking up. And if you lock up, you're going to go sailing through this corner. There's not a whole lot I can do. So I like braking a little bit earlier, a little softer, keeping the balance of the car to set up for turn 1. Turn 1 is we're coming off what little oval there is here. The track is pretty darn flat, but it does go downhill a little bit. And then after the apex point, we actually have a bit of a compression where the oval track compresses into the oval portion, the road course portion of the oval. So we can use that to our advantage. So the goal through turn 1 is brake a little bit early, get the car rotated super early in the corner, take a late apex through this corner, but not too late, and really focus on getting off the brakes early. So the tendency especially for this car is to trail brake, sometimes too much, overslow the car. This car really likes an initial trail brake to get some grip on the front tires with the balance. So whenever we brake the car or we hit the brake pedal, we transfer the weight to the front axle. When we transfer the freight from the front axle, we're transferring the weight up there, which pushes those big Michelins into the surface of the racetrack. When the tires get squished into the racetrack, they pancake, and your contact patch increases because there's more weight on and friction on those tires. So it's increasing the ability for the front tire to have just overall grip. It increases your ability to use the front tires for braking, but it also increases the front tire's ability to turn. The problem is when you are trail braking, you are asking the car to both turn and brake at the same time. So while an initial trail brake is great for getting weight on the front axle and helping the front tires bite into the surface, if you maintain that and keep slowing the car down while you're still turning the car, the tires are not going to be able to do both particularly well. So you'll actually find out that as you're coming into corners like this, where they're really tight, if you release the brake earlier than you think, you will actually get some more turning capability on the front axle. So trail brake initially to get that initial bite, and then don't just jump off the brake, but release it relatively quickly. Try to get off it as quick as you can. Let the car coast through the first part of the corner, and you'll find you'll have a lot of actual steering ability in the front of the car because you're asking the tires to only give you steering grip as opposed to braking and steering. A little counterintuitive, but give it a shot. I would say with the students that I coach privately, 90% of them overslow the car in tight corners because they're trail braking all the way to the apex because they think they need to. You don't. As soon as you turn in, the front tires are scrubbing speed with friction, and braking on top of that will lead you to overslow the car and lose time right in the middle part of the corner. So what does that look like? Okay, if we come on in, I'm going to brake at the 600 board right here. Boom. It is a really, really firm brake pedal. It is threshold braking to the max. We are getting as close to lockup as we possibly dare coming into this corner. My turn in point is going to be somewhere around the 1 board, but honestly, I'm not even looking at this 100 board at all. I am not looking at the 100 board. My eyes are down here at the apex, and in fact, at this point, I'm looking through the corner at track out point. So when reviewing my footage of replays like this, I can see that I don't turn until about the 100 board. But in reality, that's not my gauge of my turn in point. I'm not driving point to point. My vision is up. So you can see at this point, right when I start my turn in, which is right here, I start turning my wheel, my brake pedal is at about 50%. I turn in, I turn down, I'm on the entry part. My brake pedal is at about 15-20% at this point. I've turned what I would consider my first initial turn in for this. I've finished my initial turn in, and I am now going down to apex at this point. So the car has already started its rotation. I've got maybe 10% brake pedal in the car. I am pretty much at right before apex, so I haven't even hit the apex point. I've got a nominal amount of braking in. I might as well be 0% at this point. Maybe just a touch, just to keep a little bit more weight on the front end axle. And then I'm at apex on this particular corner, to what we said before, don't touch these curbs. On this particular one, I did hit the curb, but we want to get as close as we can without touching them. But look at this point. I'm adding throttle. I'm done with my braking. I'm actually starting to accelerate at this point. Coming out of the corner, I'm basically full throttle as I'm unwinding my wheel. Now, if we look at the characteristics of the track and not at my driving, again, as I said, you're coming off the oval portion. It's not much of an elevation shift, but it is one. Notice how little of the track we can see after the apex. That means that it's not on camber, it's not off camber, it's just there. And in fact, I would actually argue that it's probably hurting you a little bit because it is going downhill slightly. But as we come through here, look how much track we can see here. So this is a little bit of a compression. So we're going to get a little bit of understeer on our way out of the corner. But as we come out of the corner, we're going to get grip right here when we transition off of the banking into the infield section. So even though your front end may push a little bit wide, trust that as you come through and you transition onto the infield, you're going to get that grip back as you compress a little bit. It's not much, but it is a little bit. Ultimately, what we want to do coming out of the corner is we want to be opening our hands to accept the power that we're asking out of the car. So I'm asking 100% power in second gear through here. My hands are opening up. I need to take this left-hander like a carousel, so I need to get down to the curbing and ride the curbing all the way around. It doesn't matter if I run wide out here or I pinch the corner off a little bit. I'm mid-track. At the end of the day, we're going to all treat it like a big carousel. We're going to ride the grass around. So there's lots of lines coming out of turn one. Some people like taking it really, really deep on exit, so way out here, with the theory of we just came off the longest straightaway. I want to try to extend that as much as possible, so I'm going to brake as late as possible, and I'm going to try to carry a ton of speed through this corner, and then on the exit, I don't really care because we're immediately turning again. Some people like to brake a little earlier with the idea, even though it is a carousel, we want to still treat it like a corner and take it from mid-track. I'm somewhere in between. I don't like being all the way on the left, but I also don't like pinching this first corner off. So somewhere right around here, I'm transitioning from turning right to turning left under full throttle. The key is keep the car balanced. We don't want to make any sudden movements. So one more time through turn one before we talk about this left-hander at turn two. Back it up, back it up, back it up. There we go. So I'm coming in, brake at the 600 board, threshold braking, slowly start working off the throttle, off the throttle, off the throttle, or off the brake, off the brake, off the brake. Turn in, off the brake completely, start accelerating just before apex, unwinding my wheel as I come through the corner. Turn two, like I said, we're going to try to get down on this curbing relatively quickly. It is an exercise of patience. It always seems to last much longer than you expect. The best way to take turn two, or the best way to be most prepared for it, is get your eyes up. Don't be staring here at the apex. Be staring around the corner. We want to be looking for the rumble of the right-hander. So as soon as we can kind of see the rumble strip of the upcoming right-hander, we want to start opening our hands and accelerating out of this corner. The corner is too tight to have any meaningful acceleration through it. If we're doing it right, it's basically a lot of coasting. So we're just kind of modulating the accelerator just a little bit to kind of manipulate our line. Remember that if you're turning and you add throttle, what that's going to do is that's going to increase the radius of your turn. If you take throttle off, that's going to tighten your radius. So we're just manipulating our throttle to make sure that we're keeping in line with this long left-hand nature that we can. But as soon as we kind of see this rumble strip on the exit, on corner exit for the right-hander, we should start picking up throttle and opening our hands out of this corner. We're going to grab third gear on the way out, and we'll end up all the way on the curbing on the right. And we're going to treat the right-hander the same way we treated the left-hander, except the right-hander is wider, has a wider radius, so it's faster in general. But again, third gear, coming through this right-hander, it's almost flat. In this heat, you may have to do a little bit of manipulating, especially later on in your stint when the left side tires are starting to get overheated and starting to wear. You may have to come out of it a little bit, but in general, it should be pretty aggressive on the throttle through this point. We can ride this curb, and then with our eyes up, what we're looking for is we're looking for the next exit curb that's going to happen, that's going to lead us into turn 4. What we want to do is we want to kind of keep this radius of this corner, but we want to let the car drift out to this outside corner. This double right-hander is probably the most difficult corner on the track to get right. If you've done any driving here already in these conditions, you'll notice that sometimes it feels like when you drive out to the curbing in between 3 and 4, you end up pushing way too wide and picking up some grass and looping the car. And then sometimes when you don't do that and you let the car go where it is, you're not all the way at the rumble and you're like, man, I could have taken a little bit of a wider entry into 4 and increased my speed. All of these things are true. The car is going to end up where it's going to end up. We don't want to drive to the outside of the corner, but at the same time, we want to maximize the use of the track. We get to the outside curbing on the left because we have the right speed, not because we steered towards it. So coming out of this corner, I've got a lot of throttle in the car. I'm opening up my hands to accept that throttle because the car is absolutely on edge coming through here. And then once I kind of start getting not parallel, but getting pretty darn close to it, about mid-track, I'm going to get on the brakes. And in order to get on the brakes, I have to open my hands. If I have steering angle and get on the brakes, that's going to lead to a lockup because remember, tires don't like to do two things at once. They kind of like to do just one thing. So they can do one thing well, or they can do two things not well. So I'm opening up my hands to create a brake zone that's straighter than it would be if I kept my steering angle all the way around. So I'm opening my hands to accept the brake that I'm going to give the car. In doing that, the car is driving out to a point out here to set up for turn 4. Once I get the car slowed down, which is in time with me getting to the outside curbing, I am going to get off the brake or start bleeding off the brake, so trailing off. And then as I trail off the brake, I'm going to start tucking the car back in. I'm asking less lateral grip out of the tires, I'm asking less braking force out of the tires, and I want more lateral grip. So as I get off the brake, I can start adding steering to those tires because they have a bigger capacity for that grip. So as I'm coming around here, I'm only at about a 15% brake pedal. I'm using all of the track, so I'm right there at the curbing, and I start tucking it in to turn 4. As I turn into turn 4, I need more and more grip, lateral grip for the turn, so I'm almost completely off the brake at this point. I'm pretty much coasting on into this initial corner. I always feel like I'm early coming into turn 4. I always want to get this car down to this point of the curbing, so very early along the grass line. I want my right side tires to basically be kicking up a little bit of grass to extend the corner as best as I can. So as I turn in, it always understeers, so you always end up apexing much later, but it always feels like I'm turning in too early. I'm in third gear through here, and it's just an exercise of patience. It always feels like this corner just won't end. I've already started picking up throttle, as you can see down here. This is leading up to the second longest straightaway on the track, so we really want to focus on getting a good run coming through turn 4. We ride the curbing a little bit like a carousel, but we should be able to pick up throttle all the way through. So as you can see here, if I back it up a little bit onto my entry, so if you look down here at my telemetry, I'm off the brakes, start adding throttle, start adding throttle, start adding throttle. As I unwind the wheel, then I'm full throttle coming out of the corner. Now, any questions for the first, I'd say, third of the lap? That little sector.
Chris, you did not go much on the curb on the left side. Not safe to brake over there, or was just like on this lap was a reaction of the car?
You can get on this curbing and brake, but I would only do very little. So like your very end of your brake. But remember, I'm doing actually my heaviest portion of my braking right here. So it's not on the curb. If I do brake on the curb, it's this very last little bit, and I've only got like 15%, so not a lot. If I get on the curb, great. It's opened up the corner a little bit more, but I like having a little bit of a safety buffer. If I'm driving all the way out of here on the curb, really onto basically getting my left side tires really close to the grass, if I make any kind of mistake coming in here, or I have a lapse of judgment, I'm going to drop my left side tires into the grass and go out to the wall. So this is a bit of a safety buffer for me. You don't gain much, if anything, by going all the way out here. Maybe a couple hundredths of a second by doing that, but the risk of it is huge with a potentially wrecked car, because you're gonna have no grip if you touch this grass. So it's kind of just risk reward where you want to be. Qualifying lap, and it's your last chance where you just bring the steering wheel home. If you don't succeed, sure, go all the way out there, take it all, get every advantage you can get. But for an hour race, yeah, I'm trying to groove in a little bit of safety margin.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, hearing no other comments on those. Coming out of turn 4, one other thing that I tend to see from folks is they tend to pinch this corner off, and they tend to move the car way over here to the right to set up for the chicane. You really don't have to. I mean, you don't want to be on the left side curbing. That's just, you can't take the chicane from that point. But you can take this chicane from relatively shallow. So if like from here, I'm flat. When I got to flat coming out of turn 4, I am flat all the way to the heavy braking zone at the end of the straightaway. So even from this angle, you can still make this corner. So I'm flat, flat, flat. Little kiss of the dirt, open the hands, jump the curbing. So I'm 100% flat through there, and it was drama free. There was no problems whatsoever. So from this point right here, I am effectively flat through to the next heavy braking zone. Check to see where you are getting to full throttle. Wherever you're getting to full throttle, if you're getting to full throttle before this, fantastic. You're doing awesome. If you're delaying your full throttle until here, you try to get a better line or slow the car down a little bit on the entry so that you can get on full throttle and start accelerating sooner. If you are lifting in the chicane, you need a better line, or you need to practice going full throttle through here, maybe wrecking a couple times just to feel what being full throttle through the chicane is like. Remember, you can take all of these curbs, and even this curb, even though it looks pretty nasty, as long as your hands are straight when you hit it, you're fine. If you've got steering angle when you hit it, you're not going to be fine, and you got to come out of the throttle. But so long as your hands are straight, you should be able to be full throttle jumping over this curb like this. So look at my steering wheel right when I hit it. Dead straight. When I land, it stays dead straight, and then it only starts turning on the back end. But even so, I have all of this area on the exit to open my hands and drive straight if I need to. There's a tremendous amount of runoff, and this is not a 1X. You can use this as part of the track. So use it. If you hit that curbing, or you know you're going to hit that curbing, keep your hands straight until the car is completely settled, and then drive it through there. But you have to be flat through that chicane.
What is 1X on the chicane there? I see both tires on it.
Yeah, so this is totally fine. 1X, I believe, on this section is if your right side tires cross this white line, you'll get a 1x. You'll probably get a slowdown, frankly. And then on this one, I think it's if your left side tires go halfway across this curb, you'll get a slowdown 1x. So you can actually take this curb even shallower. The only reason I don't on this particular one is because if you get too far out to the right, the car kind of jumps. And so even though you're full throttle, the car is not putting the power down. It's kind of spinning its wheels. So you actually lose speed because you're in the air as opposed to accelerating because you're in touch with the ground. Not to mention you run the risk of getting the slowdown if you go too far over to the right. But you can take surprisingly a large amount of this curbing with your left tires and still be fine. So like even right here, I'm inside the white line with my left side tires. This is not, I didn't get a 1x for this. If we go to the rules, track rules, let's see what they officially say. Yeah, they said turn 6 on corner apex, the outer edge of the blue-white curbing. So they're basically saying that if you put your entire car over this curbing, so like in this area, that will be a slowdown / 1x. But you can get your left side tires, it says, all the way over here and be fine. But you run the risk of you're jumping the car at that point, and it's a rough ride if you're doing that.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, we've got a really long straightaway. This is where lower downforce definitely helps because you can hit a higher speed. And we come to another heavy braking zone. Very similar to turn 1, except we're going left instead of right. And we're not coming off of the oval, so we don't have that little bit of downhill on the entry into this corner. This corner is almost completely flat. In fact, we can't see past the curbing. We can't see any track. So there's no camber that is assisting us through this corner. It is just as flat as a sheet of paper. So we need to make sure we are planning for that. We need to treat it like a traditional corner, maybe a little bit of a touch of a late apex. And the goal is to carry speed and momentum through the first part of the corner while still getting a good rotation and accelerating coming out of the corner. So getting to throttle early. So we don't want to overslow the car, and we want to focus on getting on throttle early coming out of the corner. The brake zone is somewhere between this little access road and the front of the rumble here. I like to brake a little earlier just in general in this car, so you'll see me brake right here, about halfway between the two. Basically, when the rumble gets to full width, that's kind of where I'm braking. If you're saving fuel, you're going to brake even earlier. Sometimes if I'm in a long train of cars, I will lift and coast at the bridge. So I will lift right here and just coast, and then brake somewhere right around here because I'm going slower by the time I hit the brake zone. Play with it, see what feels best for you. But in general, you're usually, if you're going on like a quality run or a hot lap, you're braking probably around here no later than the road. I'd be shocked if you can brake at this. Either that or you're going too slow going in, so you lifted at the chicane when you shouldn't have. But in general, I'd be impressed if you can get to the access road in this car at this heat and still slow it down for the corner. It's threshold braking, so it's hard braking. You may hear the wheels kind of really fighting for grip and sliding just a touch, but overall we need to avoid lockup. I'm turning in at the second access road, so that's my initial turn in is right here is when I first started turning the wheel. You'll notice that I'm bleeding off like turn 1. I'm bleeding off the brakes, and right here at apex I'm off the brakes. I did a really good job on the apex point. I am as close as I can be to the curb without hitting it, which keeps the car nice and flat. As soon as I get to the apex, I am starting to roll on throttle and opening my hands and letting the car track out to where it wants to track out. We don't want to be all the way with our right side tires on the grass because we do need to set up a little bit for the right-hander, but we don't need to be pinching this first corner over here. These next two corners, this right and left-hander, are complete throwaways. The only corner that matters in this next sector of 3 corners is the final corner leading on back onto the oval, the big right-hander. So these are just set up corners for that right-hander. So here, it doesn't matter really where we enter into this corner, just so long as we maintain some semblance of momentum on the way through. So as I've come through, I'm going to move the car to about here, just right of track entry, or mid-track, I should say. And I'm going to turn in, always feels super early. I'm in third gear. I like to keep it in third gear throughout here. So I turn in super early, and the goal is to get my right side tires kissing the grass. Use all the curbing. It's flat. It doesn't upset the car. Get as close to the grass as you can to hold it. And then when you come out of it, when you get to about mid-track, we're going to transition the other way. It's just a little bit of a lift of the throttle. No brake is needed, or maybe a touch, depending on just how much speed you carry through the right-hander. But typically no brake is needed. You can just lift and get back on. So lift. I touch the brake just a touch to help get the front end settled. And then ultimately through this left-hander, we want to get up on this curbing, or on the grass. I missed it a little bit on this particular lap, but the best ideal line is like all the way down on the grass and kind of riding it around with a traditional apex point. On the exit, we want to kind of move the car as best we can to the left, but we don't need to be all the way on the left. So don't sacrifice that left-hander for this right-hander, because we have to slow down at some point. I was looking at some data from another student who was really pinching this left-hander off to make sure that he got all his left side tires parallel to this grass, right on the grass, to set up this right-hander. And I was killing him on exit speed. I was able to just carry more speed, get up alongside him, and make a move going into this right-hander. So while this right-hander is the most important corner, it's not, you don't want to completely throw away everything. And I know I kind of just contradicted myself a little bit, but ultimately, so long as we're in this position, turning for this right-hander, we should be good. The right-hander is flat like most of the corners on this track. You're not getting any camber help. There is the tendency on this corner is to overdrive on entry, which leads to a lot of understeer, and it's very easy to have the front end wash out and just completely miss the apex here, or overslow the car trying to get it down. The goal is to get the car down, right side tires inside the curbing. So long as we have our left side tires on the white line, you should be good. If you get too aggressive here, you can get a slowdown if you cut too much. So just be aware of that. Normally, I like third gear, but on this particular lap, I was a little bit messy coming through this section. I'll show you another lap where it was a little bit better. So I actually dropped it down to second gear because I had to overslow the car to get it down to the apex. I got that understeer that I don't like. So you can actually see my min speed through here is 63 miles an hour. I bet you it's faster on the other lap. We'll check it at the end. On the way out, if we take second gear, we have to be careful with spinning up the rear tires. Too much torque going through the rear tires. If we're in third gear, it's less of a risk. We can use more of our pedal because there's less torque. Ultimately, as we come out, we're going to start opening our hands. The car is going to start dancing on us. It's really going to... We're kind of drifting on the way out, like a little bit of a four-wheel drift. That's the fast way through here. We don't want to be sliding the car through here. That's slow, and it also overheats the tires. We want to just have this nice little slight slip angle and drift on the way out. So you can see my steering wheel at this point. The car is starting to over-rotate just a touch, so I have a little bit of opposite steering, catch it, and then turn back immediately. If we do it right, we'll end up right here on the edge of the tarmac and on the curbing, left side tires on the curbing, without us driving there. The car ended up there because it had to be there, full throttle. All right, any questions for the middle part of this track from turn 4 through that last turn, that segment? All right, hearing none, let's continue. So we got a good run coming out of the right-hander. Now we're going back onto the oval. This turn is pretty forgetful. It should be dead flat. It is a turn, though. We don't want to be taking it mid-track. We want to be apexing at the appropriate spot because the shortest distance between 2 points is a direct line, and so we're trying to create as direct a line as we can to the next corner. If we take it all the way out here, we're traveling further distance, which leads to a slower lap time. So get down on the curbing with the right side tires, apex it like a normal corner. Coming onto the oval, we have some interesting dynamics with the way the track's running. So we're coming off very flat track onto a slightly banked track. You can actually see, look how much of the track we can see. So we're going up onto a banking, But as we get up on the banking, it's actually disappearing from us. So it's banked and then it's going away. Where people can get a little bit tricked on this one is you come and you hit that banking thinking you've got banking, but then when you hit the brakes, you are in effectively a flat part of the track. So you don't have a really good ability to brake. So keep in mind that you will get a little bit of a bump right here coming onto the banking. It's not too bad. But as soon as we get on the banking, we're going to start thinking about braking. That rhymed. We're braking before the 300 board. There's not really a good point to say this is where you need to hit the brakes here. For me, it's a rhythm thing. As I come off of the corner, I've got my eyes up. I'm looking for this apex. Basically, the sight picture of the track coming to me, that's my brake zone. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's what it looks like to me, and that's when I hit the brakes. If you need something a little more concrete, when you get up on the banking and you feel that little bump, once the car settles, hit the brakes. It's probably a good indication that you need to slow down. If there was a board that you were going to estimate it at, it'd probably be at the 400 board. Just before the 400 board would be a good spot to brake. We're going to try to brake in a straight line because the car likes straight line braking for maximum efficiency. So when we hit the brakes, while we're still slightly turning, we're going to try to straighten out and we're going to create a straight line to the 100 board. And then we're going to turn in right before the 100 board. So our brake zone is actually across the track pointed at 100. So we're braking, letting the car go all the way to the end. And then once we're done with our braking and we start trailing it off, that's when we start tucking it in and we start turning. This is very similar to turn one. We're coming off the oval back onto the infield again. So we're coming down a little bit of a slope, very slight, but it is a slope, down through a tight right-hander. Very similar to turn one. The difference between this one and turn one, though, is the run-off or the run-out on track out is much tighter. So you can't carry as much speed through this corner as you could through turn one. Again, try to do what we can to barely kiss the curbing. We don't want to jump the car. Start unwinding our hands. We can use all of the track out track that we want. Second gear. And we're going to try to move the car over as much as we can to set up this penultimate left-hander that's really tight. We don't have to get all the way to track right to set up this left-hander, but we want to do what we can within our ability of without sacrificing speed in the car. So carry our speed coming through, move the car over to the right as much as we can, but at some point we got to turn left. We don't want to keep driving all the way out here, have to stop the car to turn it 180 degrees. We want to start our turn relatively early, maybe just past mid-track. Second gear, there's a lot of coasting on the entry into this corner. If you've practiced this at all and you're too aggressive with the brake, it's very easy to spin here for whatever reason. So when we brake, notice how little brake I have in the car. In fact, I'm coasting at this point. Very little brake. The apex point is basically the grass, a little bit late. Pick up throttle a little early. Open our hands, let the car, or fight the oversteer that's trying to come through the back of the car. We're going to end up somewhere on the right side of the track after coming through this corner. We'll move the car over to the left to kind of try to set up a little bit for the right, but we don't need to be all the way on track left for the final corner. So as the car comes through, we'll try to move the car over to maybe about mid-track or just right of mid-track, but ultimately wherever you can get it, we don't want to sacrifice positioning of the car for the speed that we're keeping in the car. And then we come up to the most important corner on the track is this final corner. Again, like I said, this corner is twitchy at best, and with this hot weather, it's super twitchy. So ultimately what we want to do is there's two tricks to it. Our entry point can be varied. Maybe we were able to get the car over a little bit more left, which means you have a little wider entry, so we maybe can carry a little bit more speed. Or maybe we carry too much speed through the last corner and we're further right, so we're going to have a little bit of a compromised entry. Ultimately, the goal is to get to a proper apex point, which is about halfway around the corner right here.
Hey, Chris?
Yes.
A question on the last corner.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So for me, that corner is blind because the the apex is right behind that post. Do you have any visual cues on when to turn in here?
Good. That's a good question. So let's see what. So I have triple screens. You can't see my triple screens. You only see my one screen.
Yeah, I've
But
got triple. I've
oh,
got triples too, but my problem is that the you can see it there that the apex there is right behind that post for the windshield.
yeah. So one of the things I try to do is, for me, I'm a field driver, so I don't really have a point. But when me looking on this particular lap, I never lose sight of that curbing. So it never completely disappears. So look, I'm turning. It never completely goes away. So I've always got at least a little bit of curbing in vision. If you are losing sight of that curbing, I would say you're going too deep. So you're out here a little bit more, and you're kind of coming in and treating it like I would say a traditional 8 apex, but you're sacrificing entry speed. So you're going to have to slow the car down more out here to get it to turn all that way versus me carrying a little bit more speed on the way in. So I'm turning in a little bit early, but still getting down to the apex. You're turning in too late, and probably being a little bit slow on entry. So try that as you drive. See if you can keep that curbing a little bit in vision like this, and see how that treats you. Now, it is variable. So like if you sit further back in the car, it may, it'll move the pillar up a little bit, and that won't be the case. But give it a shot. See if you turn in with the curbing in sight. See if that's putting you in a good spot right here. And if it is, there's your vision point. If it's not, then make your adjustment. It's always going to be there, even if it's completely blocked out by the pillar. It's still there. You just kind of have to have that idea or that imagination that pillar is translucent, that curbing exists there. You don't see it in the window on the left, and you don't see it on the right side of the pillar, so it's got to be there somewhere. Try to find a spot. If that doesn't work, if none of that works, I would say maybe the building that we're looking at in front of us. So as we drive out to the right, that pit entry sign is pretty big and enticing. Once it gets to a certain point in front of us, then we start our turn in. That could be used as a method. But the curbing, if it disappears, is not going to be gone for long. And you just have to trust that since the last time you drove through it, no road crew came through and moved it. It's still going to be in the exact same spot. You just got to trust that it's going to be there and get the feel for it.
Yeah, thanks. I think I take this turn a little further to the right.
Try
Might be,
try taking it a little bit shallower, about mid-track. I see a lot of folks come all the way out here to try to set up for it. And normally you would do that because, I want a good run coming out, right? And that's like kind of a traditional HPDE way and safe way to do it. But you're traveling a further distance, and then once you get out here, you're going to have to slow the car down even more to get it over. So take that distance out. Just take it a little bit shallower. See how it feels. When I looked at data from a guy that's faster than me was driving it versus me, I used to be one of those that drove all the way out here to the right to set up for this corner. And then I looked at how much time he was saving because he wasn't traveling as far. It was like 2 or 3 tenths just through this corner alone. And then on the exit, it didn't cost him time from speed because you got to still slow the car down to make the corner wherever you are on track. So give it a shot, take it a little shallower, see how it feels, and see if it's beneficial.
Can I volunteer an observation about this corner?
Absolutely.
Racing against AI or anyone else, this is a really good place to dive bomb or be dive bombed, especially if you're doing what you were just talking about and going way wide before the track. It's really, I've had the AIs even dive bomb me here, so just be aware of that. If you got someone close on your bumper, you're used to going way wide here to the right. It's opening yourself up.
No, that's that's a very good point. When you're racing somebody, if you're racing close, don't go to the right. Keep the car here at worst, because exactly that. If you go all the way out to track right, this is going to look so juicy to somebody behind you to just send their car up in and take away the apex. So keep it shallow. Again, you're not going to lose time. In fact, you probably will gain a little bit of time by keeping it around mid-track, and it doubles as the advantage of you are not allowing somebody to take away your apex if you're in a racing situation through here. So no, that's a really, really good point. All right, so we went through perfectly here. We're coming up to the final corner. This corner is off camber. It feels like it as well when you drive it. You can see it in the track. I mean, it's falling off to the left a little bit. There's very little grip. We want to apex right around here, and we want to get our right side tires somewhere on the curb is fine. This curb is not going to upset the car, but there is a slight bump right around here, or there used to be, that used to upset the car just slightly. And I think it's the transition from the maximum point of off-camberness, to make up a word, of right here to the camber starting to slowly come back into the car, or come back into the track. And so that maximum amount of off-camber is right at the apex point on this particular corner. The car is dancing all over the place through here. And so there's a couple of ways to handle the uncomfortableness of the car trying to swap ends on you. Method one, short shift into fourth. So grab fourth super early. So it's like coming out of the previous corner, it's second, go into third. You're just a little bit of a squirt in third. And then as you're starting to kind of enter into the first part of this corner, you grab fourth. And you're lower in the rev range, there's less torque through the wheels, so there's less chance of getting oversteer because of torque. The second method is add downforce to the car, add more wing than what you have. More downforce, more wing in the rear car. The rear of the car is going to settle the rear, and it's going to have more grip, so it's not going to slide as much. The final method is just ride it out. So you know it's going to slide. You just got to be really in tune with your right foot. If the car starts to kind of wiggle on you a little bit, just do like a little micro lift to add some grip back to the rear of the car. You don't want to jump off the throttle. If you jump off the throttle, you are absolutely going to loop it. You want to just do like little micro adjustments. And that's how I drove this particular lap. Now, bear in mind this lap, I'm trying to drive with my hair on fire. I was trying to get a 28 something, so I was driving hard. But you can see with the telemetry, my throttle is 85%, and watch my hands. I'm going to get it really slow. So the steering wheel, turning, full throttle. Oh, loop. It tried to wiggle on me. A little bit off of throttle, back full throttle. Oh, catch the slide, back turning again. Even, catch the slide, back turning again. So the car is dancing like crazy on me going through this corner. But I'm riding it like a bunking bronco because that's the fast way through this corner. So the other trick on this corner is coming out of the corner. As we come out of the corner, there's a little bit of grass here. You see this little bit of grass right here on exit? If your left side tires are going to touch that grass, you're probably going to hit the wall unless you lift. So make sure when you're coming out of this corner, you are right of this grass. Do not touch that grass. You can get up close to it, but if you touch that grass and you keep your foot in it, you're probably going to kiss this wall. So that's a good indicator on your way out before it's too late to know if you need to think about doing a pretty significant lift to avoid the wall. The other thing that really helps with the final turn is eyes up. And then that's just should be a baseline for everybody. Keep your vision as far down the track as you possibly can. You will drive the car to where you're looking. It's kind of remarkable how our eyes affect our motions. So as I'm coming through this corner, I'm looking out here. I'm looking at the American flag. I'm looking past the American flag. I'm trying to see all the way down the straightaway to see if anybody's spun coming out of this corner. That's how far my vision is when I'm driving through that corner. Way down. And if you do that, it makes it a lot easier to control the car coming through that corner. If you're looking 2 feet in front of the car, it is not easy to perform and to drive the car because you don't know what's coming down further down the track and where you are on track. So eyes out, look as far down as you can.
How much wing are you running, Chris?
I think on this one, on this particular setup, I'm running 9-wing.
Oh wow.
So it's pretty low. So what I've said, and what I said at the very beginning, I'm running the iRacing setup effectively. But I started it at Spa, so I was using the iRacing Spa setup. I used the iRacing Spa setup, plus I added 1 wing for Watkins Glen. And then in this one, I'm just using the same setup I use for Watkins Glen. So it's a 9-wing. So, you know, I think this car can go up to 14. So there's a little more room there if I want it. But again, these straightaways are and we'll talk about that right now. The passing areas on this track. The straightaways are the easiest places to pass on. If you've got less wing, you're going to have more speed. If you've got more speed, you can just drive by people before the brake zone. You don't have to outbrake anybody or anything. If you're right on their bumper, coming out of that corner, coming out of this final corner, odds are you're going to be able to get alongside them, and if not, pass them before the brake zone. If you're running lower downforce. So let's talk about passing zones. And I'm actually going to pull the earlier lap where I thought I was a little cleaner. So passing zones real quick. Coming into turn 1. Best passing zone on the track. Right here. Coming into this tight turn. And you see it by whenever there's a race here, this is where everybody passes. Almost to a fault, right? Especially at race starts when it's 5 wide. You know? And I think somebody wanted me to talk about being 5 wide coming into turn 1. Don't. If you can avoid it, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have no choice. But yeah, this is the best place to pass. You get alongside a car that's on the traditional line, and you just outbrake them, and then you park your car on the apex, and they can't get around you. Or if they take a defensive line, drive around the outside of them. There's a lot of room on the outside of this corner that people don't expect. If they take a really shallow line, they're going to have to really slow the car down. If you can get their spotter activated to say car outside, they're going to have to beware that you're outside. And you should be able to carry a little bit more momentum around them on the outside and then be on their inside for the left-hander and potentially complete a pass that way. So multiple ways to do it. Race starts coming into turn 1. Sometimes you can't avoid being 5 wide through here. The only thing you can really do to prevent it is if you're in that situation, do what you can to get out of that situation. So the most dangerous spot in turn 1 on a race start is in the middle, where you got a car on your right and your car on your left, because you can't go anywhere. You probably got a car on your rear bumper, and there's probably a guy right in front of you. You are completely beholden to everybody else in terms of where you can go. So you have no out. The safest place, I'd say, coming into turn 1 on a race start, if you're mid-pack, would be the outside. So far left. So if you're in the left lane, it's a great spot because you can everybody's going to be fighting for the apex on turn 1. Everybody. If you just take it really wide and drive around everybody, you can make up spots, significant spots, especially if there's some contact at the apex and somebody gets turned. If you're driving around the outside, you're probably going to pass 10 cars because there's going to be a parking lot on the apex. It's the same thing at Coda turn 1. My favorite thing to do is drive around the outside of the track on turn 1 because everybody dives for that one little spot at apex. So you can do the same thing here. If you find yourself in the middle coming into here, something you can do is kind of way before the brake zone. You're going to have cars barreling down on you as well. Show your brakes. Just tickle the brakes. You don't even have to get out of throttle, but just get your brake lights to turn on. That will tell the car behind you, hey, look, I'm braking. And they're going to have to slow down or else they're going to run over you. So do it a little bit early. It'll maybe create a little gap behind you, and you can kind of get yourself out of the 3 wide, 4 wide situation by slowing down early, getting out of that spot, and then letting those cars converge in front of you. And then maybe they hit each other, door each other, and you get a good run coming out. If you really feel like gambling, send it 5 wide, be in the middle, and good luck. Maybe you get through, maybe you don't. But you got to survive turn 1. It's an hour-long race. The next really good passing zone, I would say, not here. I mean, you can go 2 wide through here. You just got to be aware that passes can continue to last all the way to this point. If you come up on a car that you've been following for a while and you notice they're slow on the entry into this corner, you can make a pass here work if you ambush somebody with it. So let's say you're following somebody for a number of laps, you're studying to see where they're fast, where they're slow, and you notice that every time they come into this corner, they drive it all the way out to the left side, all the way to the curbing, and they're just a little bit slow to get this car turned down in here. If you really want to make a move and you get right up on their bumper coming into this right-hander, you could easily just turn in just a little bit tighter than them and then brake just a tiny fraction behind them or later than them to get right alongside them, and they can't turn down into you at that point, and you've got the inside and you can take it away. It's risky. If it's a last lap pass, that makes, I mean, at that point anything goes, but you can definitely make a pass through here. Understand that if you do make a pass through here, you're going to lose time to the field because it will be slower. You'll slow both cars down. But if you're fighting somebody, you need to get around them, and you can't seem to do it anywhere else. This is kind of my tricky pass if you can get that one done. Through here, you're flat out. I will say, coming through the chicane, don't be too wide. Just don't. If you are coming into the chicane and you're too wide, just lift. Let the other guy go. It's not worth it. If you are ahead and the other person's really pressing it, and make sure you're this car, the inside car. Don't be the outside car. If you're the outside car, you're going to run out of room on the second one. Always will. If you have to displace this left-hander, you're going to run out of room on the right. So just do your best not to be too wide coming through here. It never ends well for the cars. Second best place to pass is right here. Long straightaway, tight turn. Just outbrake them, much like turn one. The little S's here, not really a place to pass. It's kind of a single file line through here. Here's my honorable mention for fun place to pass. Right here. So if you're following a car again, like between turn 3 and turn 4, if you notice they always go over to the left to set up the right-hander to a fault, like all the way over here, you can easily just drive it straight and brake in a straight line. You'll be slow at apex, but they can't drive through you. You exist. And you should be able to get alongside them, if not past them, as you're slowing down, and take away the inside. And you can get a pass done if you ambush somebody right there. Coming up into this tight right-hander, it's the least of the tight corners that I would recommend to pass, just because all the cars are on edge and you're kind of everybody's driving sideways to get to the point. You can make it work, but because the previous corner was so slow, it's hard to get a run on somebody. And the only way that you're going to get alongside somebody coming into this right-hander is if they brake way too early. It is going to be very difficult to outbrake somebody when you're going the same speed and you're behind them. So unless they make a mistake, I don't advise this right-hander as a true passing point. There's a temptation to, as we talk, dive this corner. You can do it. The problem is 9 times out of 10 what ends up happening is the car that's diving goes in too hot, and they end up just completely understeering out into the car that's in the outside. They can't get it slowed down enough because they outbroke themselves, and then they just run wide and they just take out the car that's to the right of them because it didn't slow down. It's a penalty on the inside car if that happens, but you still got damage to your car because the other guy was an idiot. So don't be the guy that runs wide through there. Even if somebody shows you that huge angle there, unless you're really confident that you can outbrake them and get the car slowed down enough to make the corner, don't do it. And then the final corner, it's so on edge, you don't want to be too wide through here. You want to be on line all the way through. So those are my advices for passing spots. Any other questions?
Hey Chris,
Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about, I struggle with braking,
Mm-hmm.
obviously in this car, slowing the car down. Have you got any tips or tricks for that?
So in general on this car, there's not a lot of aero on this car. I'm gonna put it on pretty mode real quick while I talk. There's not a lot of aero on this car, but there is some. And like most cars, the faster you go, the more air moving over the car, and this car is no exception, the more the car is being compressed into the ground. And when you hit the brakes at a high speed, like the end of turn one, that is where you can hit the brakes the hardest because you have the most grip from your tires because the car is actively being pushed down to the aero. So you can brake at 85, 90%, even in a car without ABS, because there's so much grip from the aero pushing the car down. However, as you slow the car down and the car goes slower and slower and slower, there's less air going over the aerodynamics in the car. So the car is actively coming off, or is less compression in the car. So the grip envelope that you have, or the budget of grip in your tires, as the car slows down, becomes less and less and less. So you have to start easing off the brake pedal. Even if you're not trail braking into a corner, just braking in a straight line, you have to slowly start coming off the brake. If you don't, if you hit that brake pedal with 85%, and the car will accept it at 160 miles an hour, by the time you get to 70 miles an hour, if you have that same brake pedal, you're going to lock up. And that's because the aero is bleeding off of the car, and you're losing grip as the car slows down. So keep that in mind. Whenever you brake in any form of car, it's especially important in high aero cars like prototypes and formula cars. Your brake pedal at the very beginning should be the strongest pedal, and then you start to taper off. So if you look at it on a graph, it's like a reverse, like it's super peaky at the top, and then it kind of just bleeds off. In fact, let me show you what that looks like real quick. And this track rewards that, being able to do that effectively. What were you going to say?
Yes, yeah, I found that I was struggling with a really firm or a very heavy pedal on my setup. You know, it was running quite high kilograms, and if I reduced that, I felt like I could get to peak brake quickly and then bleed off better and control the car. Have you adjusted your settings on your brakes at all to do something like that?
I find the other to be true. So this is real quick what I was going to show. So this is going into turn one on my fast lap, on the lap that we showed. Here's my brake pressure, this section right here. See how fast I go to max pressure, which is about 85%, I'd say, right here, 83.3%. And then notice how after that initial brake pedal, it's consistently from that point bleeding off until I get to around 100 miles an hour. It starts to stabilize because aero's not doing a whole lot to the car at that point. So it is what it is. The tires have the grip that they've got. So it's firm, bleed off. And in fact, when I get to the kind of plateau at the end, I'm at about 60%. So it's like 6, 7, 8. So it's 23% of my brake pressure is actually bled off in the first part of the brake zone. And that's because if I maintain that 83%, I would lock up. I like a firmer brake pedal, and I like it to feel like a rock when I hit it, because I find that larger muscle groups, you have more control over larger muscles than fine-tuned muscles in a brake pedal, or at least for me. So when I go to that pedal, I know that standing on it pretty good enables me to put a lot of pressure into it, and then when I come off of it, that difference between no brake and full brake being 40 kilos, let's say, the difference in those fine adjustments is more weight, and I can judge that rather than if my max brake pressure was 10 kilos, coming off of it 20% would be what, to 20 or 2 kilos. Trying to identify 2 kilos versus 8 kilos is a lot more difficult in terms of if you try to lift 2 kilos versus lift 8 kilos. The amount of lifting ability, it's easier to manipulate an 8 kilo barbell than a 2 kilo if you were to try to, like, I'm only going to lift it a little bit or less. It's much easier to be finer with that heavier weight than that lighter weight. So that's kind of the theory behind it, that more brake pressure requirement, you have more weight that you can use to make those fine adjustments. It's quicker if you have less pressure that you need. Like, so if it's a light pedal, yeah, you can get to max brake pressure quicker. It's just more difficult to hit that ideal brake pressure consistently with a lighter pedal, I feel. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Honestly, I just thought I was too heavy for my for my GT3R, I was at 70 kilos on my brake pedal.
That's a lot.
And this,
That's
you know,
a
it's
lot.
And then I found I had to go down to 50 kilos on this just to get to 85 quickly and then
Okay.
lead off.
You must do leg presses, because like I said, I'm at a 40 kilo pedal with my setup on this car, and that's pretty that matches what my real, or at the time when I was racing a club non-boosted club sport in real life, it was very similar to the feeling. So 70 kilos is ridiculous. That's a lot.
Yeah,
it's
you
like
should see
literally
my
standing
left
on
leg
it.
My left leg is much larger than my right leg.
Yeah, tune it down a little. Tune it down a little. That's like, what, 70 kilos, like over 100, almost 150 pounds. There may be some people that don't even weigh that, so they can't put that into the brake. So anyway, I would bring it down. You got to at least be able to brake effectively and push the pedal to get to that point. But great question. I thought I heard maybe potentially another question from somebody else. Anybody else? No? All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thanks for coming to the classroom. Like I said, the big things to kind of take away here, really focus on your threshold braking coming off those long straightaways. That's where a lot of time is made or lost on this particular track. Set up the car for the final turn. Make sure that's comfortable consistently. And then tweak off of that, and then go back to that turn again to make sure your tweaks didn't jeopardize it. And ultimately have fun. Stay cool. It's going to be hot. It's going to be greasy. When you go out and practice, I would highly recommend, if you have time, make sure you practice some longer runs. Get some heat in that tire. Feel where it's at when you're 10, 15 laps in, and where the grip starts to disappear. For reference, when I was running some laps earlier today, my tires the pressures seemed to plateau at around 29, or no, not 29, 27.9 psi on that left rear. So just a hair under 28. I would say if you're getting into the 28s on any of the tires, you're probably overdriving the car, and you're going to really suffer from a grip level standpoint. So try to keep them under 28 if you can. If you're seeing 28s consistently, or mid 28s or high 28s, you're going to have to back off your driving to maintain some grip in the car, because as soon as you kind of go over that cliff in the 28s, the car is going to have less and less grip. You're going to slide more and more, and you're going to heat them up more and more, and so it just gets worse and worse and worse. And if you get, it's like anything, if you get behind it, it's really hard to catch back up without really sacrificing a couple laps or pitting to get the temps down. So all right, well, with that, best of luck. Go out and practice, and I'll see you in a couple weeks when we take on the next track. I appreciate it. Great questions today, and I'll see you at the next one. Thanks for watching.